Hut. Hey everybody, back with more Dungeon of the Mad Mage. This is session 172, I believe. Don't quote me on that. And it has been 2 weeks since we have played. We had an off week for things. So we're back. And we left things in a little bit of, not a precarious, actually a very unprecarious moment, but still a momentous moment. So, let's go ahead and kick things off with a little bit of a recap, shall we?
I suppose so.
Previously, in the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, inside the protective walls of Spiderwatch Keep, the party, with Matashtai restored to life, was busy making plans with the leadership of House Freth, their new allies. There was... Whoop. Thanks. There was a lot on the table, not the least of which was impending war with House Avrendar. But after some discussion, it was understood that mobilizing the forces of House Freth and the party's allies wouldn't be a simple task. There were numerous obstacles that lay between the territories of the Drow houses, giving the advantage to whoever was on the defensive. Time and the party's aid would be needed to remove some of these obstacles, which meant that the party had time for other tasks that lay on their plate. Namely, informing their allies of the impending war so that they had time to mobilize, recuperating from Matashtai's resurrection, and finding a way to Dalcor, the region of dreams, in order to find, and if necessary, rescue Valenna. Not all of these tasks would be as simple as others, and there was some concern over whether Avrendar would retaliate in the meantime. As a measure to seal their alliance and provide some modicum of reinforcement to the Skulltakers, Balrin was given charge of a contingent of Drow warriors that would travel to the Lost Levels and remain there as an extension of House Freth. So, a gathering was had in the parade ground out of Spiderwatch Keep as Erlal Freth, the Great Mother, gave her blessing to the party and those that would be traveling with them. The party conversed with some of their allies in the meantime, with Ashes specifically speaking to Zaftal, one of Eralal's sons, about Borden Brooks, one of the Blood Hunter's mentors. Borden had apparently impressed Zaftal, but unfortunately the Drow warrior had little information on the old Lycan's whereabouts, other than that he had traveled downward, mentioning the Death's Head mercenaries as a potential next stopping point. And so the party traveled into the maze with a large entourage, but fortunately they did so without facing down the mist or its Minotaur inhabitants. They took the portal, where Matashtai had the realization that perhaps with time and a proper solution, they could re-empower their mysterious ally. And then their arrival back at the heart of the mountain was met with much fanfare, with the Skulltakers being especially excited about Balrin's return and the prospect of having other guests. From here, the party traveled their normal path, heading up to the Willowwood, where they discovered that Willow had installed a Trent protector to help improve their defenses, and had collected the bodies of the 3 goblins that had been slain in the woods, future Skulltakers that never got to be. With Willow's blessing, the party headed to the Arcane Chambers, and then back down to the Sargoth level after a chance encounter with Halaster, and then into the Legion's territory, which had seemingly expanded greatly. Without the Sargoth Coven and the Xanathar hemming in the Hobgoblins, they had fully expanded into the 3rd level of the dungeon. Unfortunately, as the party traveled through the Stromkolder ruins, they realized the Legion's success might be a double-edged sword. It was clear the ranks of the Legion had swollen with the inclusion of the goblins and bugbears from the Xanathar Guild, and it seemed potentially too much growth too quickly. The normal air of discipline was gone, the streets filled with refuse, and a sullen, confrontational atmosphere gripped Azrok's hold. Regardless, the party were Legion heroes, and their arrival was welcomed with much fanfare. In Azrok's feast hall, they were celebrated, with Lurkana and Azrok personally welcoming them. And then, Bones spoke to Azrok publicly of House Ovrindar, and the threat to the Skull Takers, the threat to the Legion. And Azrok immediately gave the order to prepare for war, regardless of the issues that the Legion currently faced. And that is where we fade into our scene. So, you guys are already on the map. Didn't take you off the map. So, you are... Let me change the music real quick. Okay, so, you guys are in Azrok's hold. Swap cameras while this is happening. You're in Azrok's hold, in his feast hall. You're in mid conversation with Azrok. Lurkana is there. There's a gathering of various hobgoblins and goblins and bugbears, goblinoids across the board, who are doing the normal routine of being feasted in Azrok's presence, right? Which is kind of like an honor and a regular thing for all Legionnaires on rotation to feast within Azrok's feast hall. But you've already been like hailed. All of the members of the Legion are on their feet, their weapons drawn, and a great shout goes up when Azrok says to prepare for war, and immediately a flurry of activity happens, right? So, immediately like 2 or 3 sergeants of the Legion come up, and Azrok is immediately sending them away with missives or instructions. And it's clear, right? Like, he's not telling them, oh, we're mobilizing, get people into the parade ground now, we're fucking marching, right? It's like, okay, go check on these things, make sure that we are prepared should we need to mobilize in the near future, right? Like, this isn't he's not going overboard, right? But he is immediately acting upon what he has said in the context of like, the Legion will go to war, right? The Legion will, you are the Legion, you are under threat, the Legion will defend its own, right? Like that kind of concept.
War.
And immediately you all kind of see a energy and air snap back into the individuals that are present here, right? Like that sullen kind of atmosphere is almost immediately gone. And it occurs to you that you've never really seen the Legion stay at peace, right? When you first met the Legion, they were in open conflict with Terissa Ovrindar, right? With House Ovrindar. And to make matters worse at that time, Azrok was basically incapable of leading, right? Because he no longer had his blind side, right? So it was a twofold scenario there, right? Like the Legion was at war but unable to make war. And as soon as you, right, like helped assist in that scenario, the Legion was like in full mobilization. And then the next time, right, like you kind of had that sort of interaction, it was the Xanathar, right? And immediately again, right, it's that scenario of Azrok being restored, the Legion being this military machine, it's what they do, it's what drives them, yada yada yada. Next time, the Coven, right, the Sea Hag Coven, they were not in open warfare, but pretty damn close at that point, right? And after that, it has not been a long time since that, right? But immediately, like, there's this realization that the Legion doesn't necessarily do well with peace. And it's that may be of concern now that the Legion doesn't have any enemies in its immediate vicinity, right? You know? There's this, especially with this kind of like peacetime issue of the rebellious Xanathar goblinoids, right? Maybe that'll end up being the next conflict of the Legion, right? Is just a civil war. But it becomes pretty clear, I think, in all of you, or to all of you in this moment, that the Legion is not a thing that stays at peace for very long. So as soon as this opportunity is put in front of Azrock, he like jumps on it, and it's like, okay,
Yeah,
here's the next focus for the Legion. Whether or not that's a good idea is a different question. But Azrock does like immediately turn to you, and after the initial flurry of activity ends, Lorcana is standing there, Azrock standing there, and some of the legionnaires go back to their feasting. Others continue to do work, but Azrock's standing there and is basically not grilling you necessarily, but definitely inquiring for details. Like, he wants to know what's going on and when and how, right? Like, are there plans, or are we still in the preliminary stages, right? Like, what's up?
Yeah, very preliminary. We've got some roadblocks between us and the actual fight, and we've got to go up top and get some things handled there, and then I don't know. We haven't really worked out like exactly how we're handling the roadblocks. Like, House Freth did say they were planning on dealing with them somehow, but I mean, I'm assuming we were helping.
So House Breath is kind of like news to Azrock, right? Like,
oh, well, you see.
The Legion, like, the last time you guys visited the Legion, you had never met with House Breath.
Right, well, apparently House Avrandar has made many an enemy, and that includes another Drow house. And we have fought alongside them, and we have already made a pact, and we will be assisting, they will be helping.
Lorcana and Azrock both kind of like share this exchange, and then they look at all of you, right, as kind of like this collective group. And Lorcana asks, and you know this, right? Like, they kind of do this thing where they trade off of each other, where Lorcana tends to be the voice of doubt, right, or of questioning, right, or of ill information potentially, whereas Azrock tends to be the other side of things, right?
Yeah.
It's you know that it's intentional, right? Like, it's a separation of duties and personality, right? Intentionally done for the Legion, right? But Lorcana brings up to the Legion a salient point, right? Like, are we just destroying one Drow house to install another that will eventually turn on us?
I don't think
Breath
so.
are friends, not food.
Lorcana looks at you and looks disgusted and just, we're not cannibals.
Well, they're
Yeah,
not
right,
hobgoblins,
yeah.
so technically it wouldn't be cannibalism, right?
No, in Faerunian society, eating a
Humanoids.
humanoid is cannibalism.
Yeah,
And
dang.
it's funny, that's never come up before, so, like...
Anyway, no, I trust them.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, to the extent of one of us was revived after an accident by House Freth, we owe them.
There's a kind of like
Can't say
shared
no, we don't.
appraising look between Azrock and Lorcana, and
Hate them.
they don't push the issue any further. You all can tell Lorcana, obviously, right? Like, Lorcana's one of those people where she's gonna make contingencies, and you're like, okay, so Lorcana's just gonna go off and make sure that if it does happen, the Legion is prepared for it anyways, right? Not that she doesn't trust you, it's that she doesn't trust anybody else, right?
And I will say that they know that we are Legion, and they know that we're calling for your aid. And they are fine with it.
There's a little bit of a grumble, right? Like, from Azrock of a...
Happening.
you're calling your brethren to aid.
Right, of course.
Right, like, because the way in which you said it kind of like
That's true.
put a
it is.
distinction between yourselves and the Legion. And you
Right.
you guys are coming to realize, like, this is happening a couple times, right? Like, the Legion has inducted you, and they feel very strongly about that fact.
It's damn right, we're ride or die.
Yep. It's like not 100% getting somebody's pronouns down. It just
Yeah,
it takes a little bit.
But it is, so it makes logical sense for you, though. For you guys, you aren't really members of the Legion, right? Like, and you don't, I think, in your everyday activities, consider yourself members of the Legion. Staunch allies, sure, right? But not actively actual members.
Okay, I do.
Sure.
Okay, well, maybe you do, right? But there is this very, like, extreme, almost kind of like, shit, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like, this zealotry that Azrock has about the Legion being Legion, right? So, like, every time there's a hint of, like, oh, you're not Legion, it's like, you know, like, there's a negative reaction from him on it. Not to the point to where it's like, oh, he's coming at you or anything like that, but, like,
social faux pas.
For example, if you guys ever attempted to separate from the Legion, that could get ugly. Right? Like, it's clear to you in that kind of scenario.
Azracog did it just fine.
Okay. Don't.
Did not say that out loud.
Which, by the way, Lurkana has been occasionally throughout this conversation trying to catch each of your eyes, right? And very obviously kind of like giving you this scenario of needing to talk later, right? Again, bunch of different things happening, flurry of activity, etc., etc. Zach, do you have your measurement tool up?
I'm not even.
What?
Do I have it up?
No. I'm gonna move. I think my map is frozen with your measurement tool up.
I can't even see myself. I'm on a black screen.
How are you on a black screen?
I don't know. Oh,
I
found
scroll
myself.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Now Ashes is just permanently up.
What am I?
I don't see it.
You have your measurement tool selected?
I'm not using measurement. I'm on mouse.
What in the world? It doesn't matter. It's new feature, who dis, it's whatever, right? But I'm just being curious. Anyways, while all of this various activity is happening, Matashtai, one of the hobgoblins, comes up to you and kind of claps you on the shoulder, and starts talking to you, like, in a very familiar way. And it takes you a second, but you realize this is one of the hobgoblins that you painted a portrait for during your initial kind of celebration over House Avrendar when you first defeated Terissa, right?
Okay.
So he's talking to you in a kind of like very buddy way, and he looks at you, and he says, like, very matter-of-factly, he says, "You look like shit."
I feel like shit.
And he reaches, he kind of like chuckles at you, and he like looks around, almost like surreptitiously, kind of like looks around a little bit. In the middle of the fucking feast hall, there's a dozen people that can see him openly, right? And he reaches like into a side pouch, and he holds out like these two little bundles, like they're two little cloth bundles that have this little like little twine or yarn kind of like tie.
You give me drugs in the middle of the feast hall?
And he basically hands them over to you, and he says, "They'll pep you up. Don't do more than one at a time, though."
Do 7.
It is drugs. Goddamn.
And roll me an insight check, Matashtai.
Hold on, I have to add hobgoblin drugs to my character.
You can name it Graca, Graca.
Where's
What is the Oblivion drugs?
I don't know.
Skooma.
Skooma?
Yeah,
There you go.
Skooma. I was about to say that sounded like the Oblivion drugs.
What did you want me to roll, Jeremy?
Roll me an insight check.
Where is insight? There it is.
And you no longer have advantage, correct?
I don't think Valena grants me the advantage, but let me double check.
Isn't it called Twin Minds?
I don't know.
No, that is the wisdom saving throw.
Oh. He's just observant as hell.
It does say psychic glamour, so I would say that is provided by Valena. So it's
Sure.
just on standard.
Well, a 20 is still pretty damn good. So, I think due to your past, right, like your upbringing, your training in the Presidium, right, in just life in Adar, period, it's not very difficult to kind of like assume what this is from a functional standpoint, because you've seen other soldiers use various substances to kind of like give them a boost of energy, right? I'm just gonna tell you straight up what this does, because he will tell you straight up what it kind of does, but in less mechanical terms, right? What this stuff does is when you consume it, it allows you to ignore a level of exhaustion for 6 hours, right? Now,
Sweet.
technically, you're not exhausted, right? You have minus attributes, right? But the way that we're going to play this is that those are functionally forms of exhaustion for the interaction of this item, okay? The thing about the item is, though, is it is a fucking drug, right? And it comes with a downside. After these 6 hours of ignoring the level of exhaustion, the level of exhaustion doesn't go away, by the way, right? It just allows you to ignore it. So in your case, the minus penalty won't go away, right? You'll lose a -1, for example, right? Or you have -4 to your stuff right now, right?
The start.
So, yeah.
Okay,
I was about to say, I
so
don't think we've
so
long
if you
rested,
take if you take one of these, it'll go down to a -3, or if you're at a -3, it'll go down to a -2, right? Like it takes away one instance of that, basically, right?
Okay.
Or
But
6 hours.
after 6 hours, that instance comes back, and you roll a Constitution saving throw, DC 15, and if you fail it, you get a level of exhaustion.
Damn, you could die from this
Oh
bitch.
my god,
You
it can kill you.
Absolutely. So this is
God,
one of
I
those
want to be a
scenarios
drug addict so bad.
of these things, whether you choose to use them now, right? Because like he's misunderstanding
What happens?
what you're experiencing. He thinks you're just tired from like trench duty or that type of thing, like staying up too long.
Just regular exhaustion.
But this, whether you choose to use this or not, this is something in the future that you all could potentially use as a way to ignore a level of exhaustion, but with a downside, right? Like
And we
it could
need to-
be a problem.
So, what happens if you use it when you are not exhausted?
Oh yeah, what happens?
+1 to all things.
You don't know.
Oh shit. God, I wish I was
Okay.
Gad. Dude, Gad would take that right now.
Yeah, literally standing, like doing
Yeah.
nothing, gonna take the drugs just to find
Perfectly
out.
fine, not
That's how-
exhausted,
what
not
you got
recovering from
there?
resurrection. Gad's just like, oh,
Just to do it.
All right. Well, I kind of clap him on the arm and I say, "Thanks, I appreciate it."
he like gives you nod, smiles, right? Like, and he's made kind of small talk, but he looks over and he sees like one of the sergeants or Lurkana kind of like looking at him, and he's like, goes about his business, right? Goes back to doing what he needs to be doing.
Gotta go, bots is watching.
Yeah, guys,
basically.
no boss is watching.
Pretty much.
You can't let them watch you do drugs.
All right. Well, I got some drugs. That's cool. It's cool.
The drugs are cool.
You know you're cool when people bring you drugs and you don't have to pay for
Right, just for free.
Fucking Taru.
them.
Maybe one day one of us will be that famous.
One day.
I should
Probably
learn how to-
Jake.
Give me one and let me try to break it down so I can make our own drugs.
Or you could fail the con save and
Oh,
get
absolutely. If you want to take one to try to learn how to make it,
Oh,
that's fine by
shit.
me.
We're gonna have a meth lab roaming.
Oh,
with
God.
us.
Yeah. Oh, the basement of the troll school is just gonna be a meth lab now.
Oh
You
god.
guys joke, but like this could have been how things went with Gad and the Zentarum. It could have been a drug man.
Fuck the
Absolutely.
Zentarum.
It was a legitimate direction of shit that could have happened. Okay.
I was excited for that.
Yeah,
I'm sad
Ezra
we
and
did.
Gad would not have gotten along.
Yeah, we would have.
Eventually, like it just would have been
Absolutely.
it would have been a scenario where Ezra was constantly paranoid that, and rightfully so, that Gad's business associates were gonna eventually stab you guys in the back.
Wait, were
Literally.
Ezra and Gad not in the same party?
They were
We were-
Don't be
initially.
a narc.
Oh.
Don't be a narc.
He was just forming the bonds with the Zentarum.
Oh,
When
okay.
he
It wasn't
died.
like hot and heavy yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I was excited about that.
And Ezra had already warned him at least once.
Yeah, but it was working out. They were nice guys.
Yeah, until. Never mind.
They didn't kill me.
That's
Some
fair.
freaking abomination against nature did.
Also true. Okay. What else is up? Or what's going on?
Well, I
Do you
mean,
want to like discreetly talk about the sun potentially?
yeah. Is there a way we can like act like we're stepping out of the room and just wait for Larcana to come by?
So they discreetly signal her instead of
you-
just lurking, creeping
you can-
around.
You signal Larcana, and then she literally marches up to you, pulls over an attendant or a sergeant, right? Like, tells him, to basically go take care of some tasks that she otherwise would be taking care of in the immediate future, right? And then just marches you the fuck out of the feast hall, and no one questions Lurkana marching you out of the feast hall, right? Like, Azrock is busy with more things than just you guys. After you kind of like answer the immediate kind of like, like immediate vagaries of we're not exactly sure. We have to go do some things. It'll be at least a couple days before we have a better understanding. So Azrock's immediately already on this timetable of like a week to in the next 2 weeks, right? So he's starting to think about what he needs to do to make sure the Legion is mobilized. He gets some other basic information from you guys that we didn't talk about, right? Like where House Avrindar is, even, right? Because he doesn't know that information. So he's now thinking from a logistic standpoint of how the fuck to get the Legion to that point.
Yeah, it's a ways down there.
He asks a couple things about the portals, right? Like that type of things that you guys can fill him in on. So he's just now playing with this information and going about doing the basics of,
It's a lot of people to risk
preparing
through
an
the
army,
shadow of the mountain.
right? So
Unless he just sends his best and brightest, and we strike Team Alpha it.
yeah, I will say from the very
Alpha.
beginning, like I don't think there's no obvious intention for the Legion to uproot itself and go all the way to the location of House Avrindar. Like it won't be a full
might be better, though.
mobilization of the maybe. I mean, if you want to do that, you can try to convince the Legion that that's the plan, right? But the initial concept is like what will it take to put enough forces to matter in the field against House Avrindar in the location that is necessary, but also maintain the territory of the Legion as is, right? And you kind of like see again that energy come alive back in the Hobgoblins, especially here, right? Like because they'd kind of had this kind of like And again, for clarity, it had only been, I think, a couple days since, maybe like a week since you guys have been here with the Coven being a thing. And the Legion's already like doom and gloom of like, oh, we're gonna get old and fat, you know? Like, and now they're like, war! Yes! War!
This is what it's good for.
Yes.
Absolutely everything.
It's purpose for the Legion is what it is. So,
glorious purpose.
Anyways, moving on. You guys are escorted by Lurkana to a different location. Location that you guys have been to before. In which you had a private conversation with Lurkana. Wolf is with you. Mossy's with you.
Yeah, Moss.
You guys have a fucking entourage at this point. Lurkana pulls you into this room. She takes a moment, and you kind of actually see her go around the outside of the room, and she's kind of like listening at the walls for a moment, right? To really make sure that you're not being overheard. And then she turns to you in very hushed tones. She asks, have you found something about my son?
We're not sure.
We have.
Maybe. Well, that depends.
Didn't they? Isn't it implied he's the Death Head Man?
We know. Well, we happen to hear about and are kind of in the realm of tracking a mercenary group of hobgoblins.
Damn, you take way better notes than me.
By the name Death's Head. We have no way to confirm if Ezrah is a part of it or leading it or not, but I was hoping that does this ring any bells?
I mean, so Lurkana, a very quiet, hushed conversation. Lurkana says the name does not mean anything to me, no. But when Ezrah left us, he took a large portion of the Legion's forces with probably 30% of the Legionnaires who wanted to march to more wars, who thought we had settled down. And I know of no other large force of our people anywhere in this area. But, I mean, he didn't stay here. He left. He marched away. We lost all contact and knowledge of him. So, it's possible that this group of Death's Head mercenaries that you speak of is them returned. Also, it's possible it's an entirely different group of hobgoblins.
Yeah, it's a coincidence that we're going. The leader goes by the name of goes by the name of Doom Crown. Does that make
you
any
see
sense?
her face kind of like she has a instinctive kind of like reaction, and her eyes narrow, and she kind of glowers and sighs, and then she kind of like nods, and she says, I think that might be my son.
Where'd Doom Crown come from?
She looks very distastefully, right? Like, when he was a youngling, he would fantasize about being a great king. And she says this kind of like with a disparaging tone, right? Like, she doesn't like that this is a thing. She doesn't like admitting it. She's only saying it to you behind closed doors, right? Like, you are kind of in this in this instance, not only her allies, you are her agents, right? And she says he used to play that when he ran the Legion, he would do it as a king and wear a crown of doom.
Ah, I see.
And she looks disgusted, right? Like how could a child of hers have this kind of like fanciful notion, right? Like of dreams and ideal, like illusions
right.
of grandeur. How fucking
This
dare,
is not
right?
the
Like,
way.
yeah.
Right. Well, he might actually know something about somebody I'm looking for. So we have more than just your request to consider, anyways. So
She gives you an appraising look, right? Like she has this kind of like slight reaction to your statements. Lurkana's not especially good at concealing her emotions and her impressions, right? Like you can tell when you say that there's something that you need, right? There's this kind of like instinctive reaction from her of like, no, my thing is the priority, right? Kind of like, but she immediately she immediately quells it. She says nothing on it. She doesn't like, she just has that kind of like, kind of like reaction.
Gotcha.
And then she's done.
We'll
And she
find
kind of
him.
nods and she says, "Good." It seems as if perhaps once all of this is done, and she kind of like motions, the fact of kind of like the preparations of war, right? Then perhaps you will continue further.
That's the plan. I mean, that's kind of what started all this. Is we're trying to make our way down, and Arvindar has just been a constant impediment to that. So
Yeah. She gives she kind of nods and she's like, this makes sense to her and it's plausible, right? Like, and she does not have this crazed urgency of like, oh my god, we have to do this thing now type situation. She seems satisfied with the idea that, you do this, you fight House Sovrendar, and then you keep going and you find her son,
I know when we talked about this, we never actually asked this. But is there any kind of message you would like us to relay to Ezrah when we find him?
You see, she has a distant look, right? Like she's had 100 messages that she's composed in her head, perhaps, right? And she kind of like shakes her head a little bit and she says, "I do not know the man my son has become. I know of no message that can cover all that might need to be covered."
Makes sense.
If it is my son, once I know where he is, I will likely ask to speak to him directly so that I can assess what kind of man my son has become.
And then Makara.
I mean, if he's leading a successful mercenary group, then it seems like he might have the chops for leadership.
Kind of shrugs. There's she doesn't do it in a dismissive way, but there's obviously a lot running through her head, right? Like she has this reaction of like, there maybe he is running this, or maybe he's someone's puppet, or maybe he's running it but it's not successful, right? He came back after all, right? Like, if this is him, why'd he come back? If he couldn't hack it out there in the world, is he a worthy successor, right? There's like there's a myriad of emotions on her face, and you see all of these, and she's just kind of like, she just shrugs.
Would it be wise? I'm sorry, I don't mean to like bombard you with a bunch of questions, but would it be wise if when we found him, to mention that that his father has a sight back?
He left prior to all of that.
Oh, so he never knew.
Yeah.
Okay.
He left many years ago.
Okay.
Because he did not agree with the decisions of his father and felt he could lead the Legion better.
Mm-hmm.
And then she kind of like has this kind of like look on her face, and she doesn't, it's like she's gonna say something, but she doesn't want to put those words into existence necessarily. But like, you guys have experienced this before. The Legion has a process for which individuals that don't think the Legion is being run correctly can do something. They can challenge the leader of the Legion, right? And you've seen how that works in the past, not directly, right? Because someone didn't challenge, but when it came down to were they going to challenge or not, that person ritually killed themselves to avoid issues within the Legion, right?
Good Lord.
Ezrah Cog, rather than challenging his father, right? Like what Lurkana's kind of putting out there in the air is he vomited rebellion and just ran away with his tail between his legs.
Oh, so okay, yeah, got it.
Right, but she's not saying
sure we've
that.
already gone
You
over this,
see
but
it?
it's been like that was like a year
yeah.
ago when we actually.
That was like
Absolutely.
3 years ago.
It's a long time ago. You see
Sorry.
it on her face. She doesn't say any of this to you, right? Like, but this is all stuff. Again, she's very easy to read,
Right.
and you've seen this, and you've had conversations about similar topics, right? So, like, it is a very easy, intuitive leap to be like, oh, she has doubts, right? Like, she wants to believe in her son, but she has real doubts about whether or not he is anything of worth.
Same.
Well, yeah. Whenever we get a hold of them, you'll know.
The conversation kind of comes to an end, right? Like, things are typically very abrupt with Lurkana. The moment kind of passes, and she nods, right? And then she just walks out. And
Did we establish with her or with the greater group who should be the telepathic point of contact?
no, I mean, not specifically, but like, again, when that kind of concept where you had all of the conversations with Azrock, where you were, like giving him information, you could have easily dropped someone's name or been like, hey, XYZ, right? Like that type of situation. So if that's something that you would have wanted to determine, it's simple enough.
I mean, that is something we said we were going to do so that we didn't break Legion code or...
Sure. So who specifically do you guys want to throw out there?
We ask them if who is appropriate to be contacted via...
So it's asked,
those
right?
tools.
Like who is doing the contacting, right? And who's doing the contacting is
Lurkana.
Erlal Freth, right? Like the leader of House Freth, right? Like so immediately Azrock is just like, he talks to me.
Very well.
Right? Like there's no like he has this kind of like scenario of like, oh, the leader of this force, yeah, they talk to the leader of this force. Right? Like,
Did not expect that, but okay.
I mean, since you guys returned the Dagger of Blind Sight to Azrock, you've seen, like, in the instances, he's a significantly more in charge person. He is very much the face of the Legion, but he is also an active war leader. He likes to participate in things. He likes to be involved in things. It was just that initial time that you guys met him when he had to kind of like play act as incapable, or not incapable. He had to play act as disinterested so that people wouldn't know that he was incapable.
Right.
I was more surprised because someone fucking around with your mind, maybe not something you want happening to your...
Azrock appears to have every amount of confidence that no one could fuck with his mind in any way, shape, form, or fashion for the rest of forever. Steel trap.
Well, obviously.
Yeah, of course, right? Like,
right?
Ezra makes a note.
I mean, Azrock is not without his flaws.
Sure.
Dominate
We all have them.
Yeah,
yep.
Absolutely. So, you guys you finish your conversation with Lurkana. You eventually head back into the feast hall. A couple of more things are done here or there. Is there anything else that you guys feel like you need to accomplish? I think what we can do is if there was anything that you guys think about later on that you're like, oh, we should have had this part of the conversation with Azrock and Lurkana, then we can just be like, okay, that happened, right? You know. But the general scenario is that you guys are going to be back in a couple days or something like that, and at that point you'll have more information, right? Like that kind of situation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's cool.
And in the meantime, the Legion's going to prepare for war.
War.
And that's that. I will say, right, so this gets brought up by Azrock and or Lurkana in the conversations, because we're glossing over it, but Azrock will grill you, right? Like, he asks for everything you know about House Avrandar, and after he finds out about House Freth, he kind of grills you on House Freth as well, right?
Yeah.
And it invariably in that conversation, Azrock will find out that the Skull Takers were attacked by House Avrandar, right?
Yep.
And unless you guys are intentionally hiding it, he will find out that House Freth now has a contingent of warriors in the territory of the Skull Takers, right?
Yes,
and
I host of my allies' warriors.
He doesn't immediately push it, but the insinuation is that when you return, right, you will be taking a contingent of the Legion with you back to Skull Taker territory.
It so much. We're
and
better friends
it's
than
very
they
much
are.
like it's very much one of those scenarios of like, partially it's, oh, we've got to be helpful, right? We've got to protect our allies, but it's also a not to be one-upped by the other allies.
Yeah.
Type situation.
Sounds good to me. That's not a problem.
I'm just waiting for one of the goblins to accidentally fire a crossbow bolt into one of the other factions.
We slowly turn the lost levels into a fucking powder keg, honestly. Anyways, yeah, so again, there's probably 2 hours or so of conversations that are had of Azrock downloading information from you. Eventually, during that time, the current feast that is kind of happening ends, and those feast tables, as you've seen in the past, right, are kind of like carried out, and the war table is brought in, and they don't have any maps or anything like that for the kind of territories that they're talking about. So there's a couple of sergeants that are a little more on the artistic side that start pulling out vellum and shit like that, and start jotting down rudimentary kind of like concepts from the things that you were saying, right? Like how many floors down, general kind of like topography, other situations, and there's a lot of concern about like how does the Legion march there, and it becomes more and more of a kind of like concept in discussions, right? Where like Azraq's like thinking that maybe what's gonna have to happen is that strike forces are gonna have to go through portals, right? Like that the Legion's gonna have to prepare, and it's gonna have to be a scenario where the Legion goes through portals, hopefully with blessings, and then attack House Avradar in that way, right? But again, these are all still things that are very much up in the air, and Azraq is just constantly in war mode making plans now. So, unless there's anything else that you guys want to do or discuss in the immediacy, you're kind of like just not given leave so much as Azraq gets everything that he wants from you and then kind of goes off into his own little mode, and Lurkana comes over to you and is like, yeah, you have business to attend to. Go do what you do.
All right.
He'll be like this for days. You know?
He gets this way.
Yeah. So, what, if anything, do you guys want to do?
Let's see. I mean, is there any other business that we have in the Sargoth Way, or...
I don't think so.
Well, here's the thing. If we just wanted to head back up top, we don't really have a great way to do that.
Walk.
I mean, we're gonna have to walk out of Sargoth through Arcane, and then we're back on the first floor.
Which is
I mean,
what we've
that's
always
like-
done.
Couple
Yeah.
hours. Ain't no
That's-
thing.
It's
No.
like a 90-minute, 2-hour
Okay.
travel, if memory serves.
Each
Okay.
each movement between floors is about 30 minutes, generally speaking.
Sounds good.
So yeah, we just jog on up.
Then, yep. The cordial farewells, and we leave.
Cordial farewells, then we leave. Agreed.
Awesome,
Or
fantastic,
whatever is cordial for the Legion.
fantabulous.
Like
There's over here.
forearm shakes and back clasps.
You leave Legion territory. As you are leaving Legion territory, you see already the ripples of excitement in the hobgoblins and in the actual like other members of the Legion, like because they're previously the hobgoblins of the Legion were the dominant force, right? Were the majority force. There was a smaller subset of goblins and an even smaller subset of bugbears, right? So those individuals, any individuals that you see that are kind of like obviously Legion, right? There is this air of excitement and kind of like purpose that seems to be being restored to them. The rest of them are still sullen, and there's this nasty atmosphere. And as you're leaving, you witness a moment or two, like a situation or two, where like these legionnaires that are kind of like getting a little bit of that kind of like focus or purpose back are side-eyeing these other elements. And as you leave, you don't know if you have expedited this rebellious phase or not. Or whether or not, because like it was this scenario where the Legion was just kind of like listless and letting this thing happen, and now the Legion's not listless and they've got to prepare for war, but they got a problem in their midst right now. And you see that kind of like realization, whether it's conscious or subconscious, you see that on a couple of the faces that you meet as you leave, right? So either way,
so
you do leave.
basically, when we come back, we're gonna hear there's a goblin rebellion, and
Jeremy, point of
knows?
inquiry as we are heading towards the second floor. How heavy were the kegs of Malarican ale?
Oh, I can check really quick just to give you an exact answer. The brewery. Aha. They are
Heavy enough to break the ice.
And when you're serving ale, that's what you want.
Oh God. Oh, I remember that being a problem. Yeah. Each barrel contains 40 gallons and is approximately 400 pounds. That's why it was a problem last time.
Okay.
They're big.
Is alcohol a problem or more of a solution?
Oh, well, sorry. It's a solution, but it's a difficult solution to get to the top in the barrel. Right. You can get it to the top real easy
What if I wanted to take it to the bottom?
Oh, I mean, also potentially a scenario. Yeah, absolutely.
I would be, as we're walking up the stairs, bringing up the morale conversation I had with Rilnafreth in regards to helping boost morale, bringing things such as drinks or sweets in mass, or good steel and equipment, and knowing that we do have access to this cash. One, are we okay with bringing a keg or two? But also, do we want to bring a keg or two? Or focus on other alternatives?
It would, I mean...
Yeah, I don't care.
I mean, right now, the only thing you guys are doing with that supply is occasionally, I say occasionally, you haven't had to re-up your supply yet.
I mean, we made a concerted
they're 400 pounds, they're 40-gallon barrels, so you guys brought up like 10 of them originally or something like that. So, like, I think I have it noted that you go through like a barrel a week, basically. Also, because it's like specialty, like you guys don't sell it at a cheap price. You sell it at a like more expensive price.
It's a premium.
Right? Yep. It's a premium scenario, so not everyone's buying it constantly. You know, so you go through like a barrel a week.
How heavy or how full is your bag of holding, Zach?
I can tell you that thusly. Here in
thusly.
Just a moment as I open it. It's loading. Just everyone hold, please.
Mm-hmm.
I have 292 pounds in there currently.
Huh?
Do we potentially want to bring 2 barrels up with us? Check our stock. If we need to drop both of them off to replenish our stock, then maybe grab 1 or 2 on the way down. Assuming we have alternative carrying capacity to maybe free up some space in Zach's bag for the moment.
You also know that Ashes can just carry a barrel.
I can carry one.
Like, he can just straight up carry a barrel. It's just going to be...
You can, but that comes with its own...
It's just... I lose, like...
No, but also... Like, I've got room in my bag for 1. If we free up room in Zach's bag for 1, and potentially Ashes could carry 1, then we bring 3 barrels up.
Yeah.
And at the very least, we leave 2 barrels up there, or 1 barrel up there, and if we want to bring 2 down for the House Freth.
Or you could leave all 3 up there and get more barrels on the way back down. Yep.
Yeah, it depends on supply and room and all that shit.
Sure, 100%.
Because I feel like we kind of filled up our basement a little bit with kegs. With the
you guys
more kegs.
Your cellar, your wine, beer, root cellar scenario is relatively large. It's not like it's not massive, but it's designed to keep a place supplied. So, but 10 40-gallon barrels do take up a lot of space. So
Sure.
yes, you've got
Depending
like a
on how
whole wall
frequently
that's basically
they're-
taken up with the Malarkin stuff.
Yep.
So
is that something we want to do? Bring 3 barrels up?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
I'm for it. Let's do that.
Sounds fun to me. Yeah.
Put my vote in. More ale.
wonderful.
So Bones needs to offload. How much did you say you had in?
I
In your bag?
292.
So about 200 pounds he needs to
That could be a
offload.
lot of stuff.
Yeah, as long as you guys have the comparable space elsewhere, though, we don't have to like finagle it out. It's just someone else needs to tell me I have 200 pounds of empty space in my bag.
How heavy are they? You said 200?
They
No,
are
the
400
barrels are
pounds.
400 pounds.
Each
Zach,
barrel is 400
each barrel
pounds.
is 400 pounds. Yeah, Zach has basically 300 pounds in his bag of holding right now. So if he gets rid of 200 pounds or offloads that 200 pounds onto someone else, he can fit a barrel in there.
Or on his person, or whatever the case may be.
I don't
Yeah,
think
does anybody
Bones can
want,
carry 200 pounds
a-
directly.
Does anyone want a T-Rex tail or a T-Rex rib cage?
Again, we don't need to get into the nitty gritty of like the specifics.
It's more can we carry the weight?
Keep it. You're gonna keep it. I'm just gonna say I'm holding it.
Yeah,
for you.
if Matashtai, do you have that much space?
So I have 282 pounds in my bag of holding.
You have the space.
So,
Yeah.
Alright,
So
I put 200 pounds in his bag and then put a keg in mine.
Yep.
Okay,
I
so
put all
we
his
got
stuff
the-
in one bag so
Yep.
that I can find it easily out of the bag of holding.
I'm going to be
Love
real
it.
honest. I forgot you had a bag of holding as well. Because
there are
Here's my bag of holdings.
there are 3 bags of holding and a handy haversack. So you guys got a fair amount of storage capacity right now.
I mean, my haversack's a little on the full side,
But I mean in total, right? Like
yeah.
Okay, so easy peasy, you guys head up to the arcane chambers. You go through the motions. You find yourself staring down the long hallway of the red lights that go bloom 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 down the hall, and you know at the end of this hall are the animated ballista that fire magical bolts of fire at you. And Matashtai can literally just walk down the hallway and go whoop, 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 and just catch those things out of the fucking air, and you guys can put those things in the dirt immediately without questioning anything. So we're not even gonna worry about that from a conceptual standpoint. You make your way through the actual brewing room where it has the massive fucking, what are they called? Can't remember what they're called. The massive cisterns or whatever. Down to the barrel rolling slope, right? Yep. Which you know to be trapped. It's got the holes, so you have to do the whole like little jumping over them thing, which again is very simple for you guys. And then you have the north storage chamber and the south storage chamber. You guys had pulled from the north storage chamber previously.
We continue.
Just continue taking from the north storage chamber. Easy. I think they are roughly equal. Yeah. God. So much. Yeah, so the north storage chamber is the one that's more put together. It's the one where the barrels were all stacked neatly in a pyramid until you started taking them away. The south one has some barrels that are kind of like smashed. It's most of the pyramid is intact, but some of them have been kind of like smashed as if someone just kind of like rooted around in there. But that was like that before you guys, or when you guys found it the first time. Nothing seems to have changed since.
No evidence of...
no evidence of anyone else finding this. You guys grab 3 barrels and you head on your way And you're just hoofing it up to the first floor and then out of the dungeon, right?
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
I believe that's the case.
Fantabulous. You hoof it all the way up to the ruins of the Tall Market.
Oh shit!
And you
I forgot about Yak.
And you make your way.
I'm done.
As you're making your way through, you step into the Tall Market, and immediately you hear a voice kind of call out, in a very commanding tone. Who's there? Identify yourselves.
Voice sound familiar?
Roll me a history check.
Ooh. I'd be rolling that history.
I mean, anyone who wants to can roll it for me. I mean, it's not only Ashes that can try to recognize a voice.
No idea.
Ashes does not seem familiar.
I have a feeling I also do not know who this person is.
My sheet is fucking.
No, I'm like the back of your hand. What are you talking about?
Roll 20. Can you please cooperate? History.
No, he cannot. He refuses.
Oh, I was sitting on that 4 for a bit.
Ezrah and Bones. You both do recognize this voice a little bit. It takes you a moment to place it, and you both place it for different reasons. But your memory calls back to a golden dragonborn, who you, I think, last saw. Maybe that wasn't when you last saw them, actually. But who you met at Howldown. Fighting against the trolls.
He was a badass.
And as you guys kind of like step forward, and there's a moment of you see them, they see you, you see the members of the second octave standing amidst the ruins of the Tall Market. You see the Tiefling Paladin, Idealism, Golden Skin. You see that kind of like diminutive, young human woman, blonde, looks almost kind of like a little girl, right? Like very out of place. You see this kind of like ancient looking elf hanging off in a corner. And then you see this golden dragonborn, Othakent, right? The leader of the second octave, which is basically like
sounds like some
one
Harper
of the
bullshit.
crack teams of the Harpers, right? Like they're the Harpers are not known to have like, boy,
Tap.
he just I tried to ignore him. I tried to ignore him for like a solid 3 minutes there, and he's just like Papa. I'm gonna have to sit over here. So gotta move over here. The Harpers aren't really typically known as a militant organization, right? Like they're more in information gatherers and diplomats and schemers, kind of like behind the scenes, right? But they have worked with so many adventurers over the course of the years that there are a small few of them that are kind of like, when the Harpers need something done, these are the ones that get that thing done. And that's typically, they're the octaves, right? There are a handful of them, and they're basically adventuring parties that are static workers for the Harpers, or members of the Harpers, right? So you see this individual, and he kind of steps forward. He recognizes you. There's this kind of like initial air of reaction from the rest of the second octave, and then immediate relaxation. And then you see standing across from them is this very kind of like stately, older looking elven or half elven gentleman, right? Like silver a little bit of black in their hair, but most of it has gone silver, just from the age of their existence. And you recognize this individual as well. Though you saw them only briefly in this form as you escorted them out of Dwemercore. This is Nindeltath, the Shadow over Moonglade, the silver dragon that you freed from the transmutation room. And it's very clear, like, there's a separation between the two. It's very clear, like, the octave is here with Nindeltath, but not with Nindeltath, right? And, that you are known to both of these parties. They both kind of hail you. And then there's this moment of silence that kind of hangs in the air, as if, like, waiting to see whether you're gonna press the situation or not.
Oh, hey guys. What's up?
How's it going?
Nindeltath, good to see you. Goldman,
Goldman.
always a pleasure.
There's a kind of like a brief exchange between the members of the second octave as it's realized that you know Nindeltath, and Othakint kind of like turns to you and kind of like cocks his head a little bit and says, "You are familiar."
Yeah, he's a cool guy. A little sad, but that's understandable.
You hear this kind of scoff, right, from Nindeltath, and he says, "I told you that some allies, friends, told me to go this way," and he's clearly, right, like, annoyed or perhaps like frustrated, and he looks like he's maybe been here for a bit.
Didn't we write him a letter? Did you show him the letter?
You see Nindeltath kind of like looks and he says, "I delivered the letter and then was told to wait."
Oh, here?
Oh.
I don't remember what the letter was to or about.
He says, "Well, not here specifically, but this was the best, least pest-ridden location that was nearby."
Oh yeah, that's fair.
I'm making him sound a little more haughty than he actually is. He's not this haughty, but elven voice in my head is just haughty.
Hey, what did we? It was a letter of introduction to Waterdeep, right?
I don't believe
so. Was that
so.
Right? Does anyone remember what that was for?
I absolutely do not remember at all.
Oh, this is gonna be a Jake remembrance.
He says, I told them to ask for it Zeradoa, and he looks to Matashtai, and he like that's supposed to solve everything, right? And you actually, in fact, hear idealism spout off at the back, just because that means.
Oh, okay, right, yeah. We see what's going on here.
Did you say that out loud?
Yeah.
You see the
I
little...
assume Matt's about to jump in, because I don't think I know about that dragon. I was just talking.
The blonde kind of like
cocks
her
obviously
head.
I remember the dragon. I'm not following the rest of this.
We wrote him something to introduce him to Zeradoa, and they don't know who the fuck that is.
Also, very specifically, 2 members of your party, Bones and Ezrah, know.
I gave him a bow box or something.
No, right? That dragons can't enter Waterdeep.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
There is a permanent, immense magical enchantment that defends the city of Waterdeep from dragons. Dragons cannot enter the city unless they are granted special permission by the Dragon Ward.
Yeah.
Right.
By the what? By the
I
dragon
completely
Adora?
forgot about
By the
that.
Dragon Ward.
Oh.
Yeah,
Which-
yeah, that came up in
you have met, Bones.
Dragon Heist. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Dragon
I
Ward.
recall
The Dragon
that.
Ward is both a item. It's a staff, right? And it is a person. The person who carries the staff. And you met this person.
Is it the
well,
the gold boy? No,
That's the gold dragon that you
Yeah.
you recovered.
Yeah.
Neverember's
Yeah.
Hoard
The
from.
gold
Yeah,
dragon.
absolutely.
Yeah, me and Ezra have though.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so we know him. He's a good guy. Probably. I would say probably. He's a good guy.
There's a kind of like immediate air of like, of course, from like Nindeltath, and then like
Was
a
he
couple
the-
of the members,
the Bane?
specifically, huh?
This is the silver boy who was petrified.
in Dramacor.
In Dwemercore, the one that you have.
No. Sorry.
Petrified.
What I meant was, what is the dragon that grants access? The one in the bay?
The vault.
No.
Not
it's
the
one
copper.
who was in the vault.
Oh, okay.
In the vault.
Yeah, the one in the vault, the gold dragon.
You
in-
guys
in
didn't
the
meet
hidden
him. That
vault.
was me and Ezra.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Wait, y'all met a gold? Y'all met a gold dragon? What y'all meet a gold
Yeah,
dragon?
he was a cool guy too. He's old though.
This party's met so many dragons. It's almost like
Not
there's a
enough.
lot of dungeons and dragons in this game.
There's
Not
A lot of
enough.
both.
Almost
So,
like that.
so there's an obvious situation. Striaden, right, the elven arcanist that kind of like hangs back and sits off on the side,
Oh, no, I found my
generally says
note
nothing,
about Nindaltath.
right? Othakint seems to be this kind of like staunch, mostly quiet voice of reason. Esmel and Idealism, the other two members, are the ones that do a lot of the talking, and they're very sarcastic. They're very catty, consistently,
Same.
right?
All right, well, this is gonna go well then.
But not in like a confrontational manner, just like would have been like you say all of this and it's like, oh, would have been great if we knew that whoever the fuck you are was great allies and knew this person, like, oh, that would have just made everything so different, because then we would have
You
just
don't-
been like, yeah, let this
You don't know who I am.
fucking-
We're the Wards of the
I
High
mean, we
Road.
know who you are. I mean, who are you? Well, you see Idealism, the kind of like golden. He's a tiefling of, or they're a tiefling of Mammon, right? So they have this kind of like gold flared skin, right?
Well, that's pretty cool.
Just look at you with this kind of like sarcastic, like, I'm way on the high road, right? Just kind of like that means nothing
Damn.
to them, right?
Slapping bones.
I'm not gonna slap him because
Kinda
then
like
make
he-
Jake kill his dragon friend.
You see Idealism reach into a bag and like, oh shit, I got the wrong bag. Never mind. Hey,
You have the wrong bag? Is that what you said?
they pull Esmel over and there's like a little conversation, and then like you realize Idealism was gonna taunt you with something, but like doesn't have the thing that they were gonna taunt you with.
They're Warden of the High Road too.
and there's this like deflation of like, oh well, fuck, never mind. Whoops.
Well, that's very funny. All right, so what's up? Were you guys like investigating him, or what's going on?
Oak the Kint kind of does the Dragonborn growl. We're watching for now, waiting for more information.
Information about what?
A decision must be made. We are not
Oh,
the
okay.
ones to make that decision, but we were told to keep an eye on him for now.
Sure. I mean, you can keep an eye on him, like a little less hostily. He's a cool guy.
We were having pleasant conversations. You hear Nindeltat just sigh audibly, just like, pleasant. I don't want to be here. And it's actually at that point, right? Like you hear this clacking of like wood on stone, and you hear out from the west, you hear this other familiar voice. Because you guys are familiar with too many fucking voices. You hear this, well, I don't really want you to be here either. And you see stepping out from the shadows, the Blackstaff, Vajra Safar.
Oh shit!
I'm sorry,
Oh,
what?
And behind is a small dwarven man of reddish-hued skin with this, like, bright, fiery sun kind of, like, hair.
Oh, hey, guys, it's the Dragon Ward.
That
We found
Bones and
It's the
Ezra
dragon.
both recognize
Hey,
as...
y'all know him?
Yeah.
I know her. I don't know him.
No.
And he just has the happiest go lucky, like jolliest look on his face. Looks very pleased. Almost
Wait,
looks
a
like he's
dwarf that looks
excited to be
happy?
out, right? Definitely, right?
Sorry.
Um
I'm trying to remember. Did this gold dragon give somebody like a bones loot or something?
oh,
No,
Gabe,
that was the dragon in the bay.
I have a
Yeah,
scale
right.
from him.
Yeah,
Yep. It was like a legendary loot or something. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
That
got
was
my
the loot
dragon
that
mixed
Tulip
up.
had.
so many dragons. Yeah, so there is a hush that falls, at least over Nindeltath and the second octave as Vajra Safar kind of like enters into the scene. And behind her, this dwarf she stops. She turns and she's kind of like looking at everyone. And she looks down at all of you. And she just looks fucking pissed. And she's just like, of course you show up now. Send in your little missives and acting like you own the world and everything's just gonna work and do whatever you say. Do you have any idea what kind of commotion you could have caused sending adults? And she turns to kind of like gesture towards Nindeltath, and Oranax is not listening to her and just walking past, right? And she stops herself and she looks at this fucking dwarf, and you see as he walks forward, you see the back of him starts to like distort, and in motion he moves from being this jovial little dwarf to a huge golden dragon.
Okay.
And you
Turn
see
this mouth.
as he shifts, immediately Nindeltath shifts as well. And
shit.
now there are two massive dragons
As is custom.
in a moment, right? Like Vajra's like trying to browbeat you, and then these two fucking dragons are fully ignoring her, and you see
Matt quickly pulls out a sketchbook and he's just like,
It's like, oh fuck
she
yeah.
is more angry by being ignored by these fucking dragons than she is about the rest of this shit. So she immediately, her attention turns from you guys to the fucking dragons, who kind of do this, let's be honest, it's kind of like a dog butt sniffing kind of like interaction. Like they start to circle each other, and their heads are kind of like angled around each other, and they're looking over each other. There's no actual sniffing necessarily, right? But there is very much this kind of like circling motion of these
Checking
two
each other out.
dragons kind
Dragon
of
culture.
checking each other out. And then they kind of like
What's up?
pause, and there is this kind of like intense tension in the air, and you can see across the way the members of the second octave are all standing casually, but they're standing casually with the kind of like nature of like a really cool Wild West gunslinger, right? Like that kind of scenario of like, oh, I'm all good. Everything's great. My hands are only a foot away from my guns, just in case, but everything's great, right? So like, there's that immediate air of like, they're fine, they're chill, they're ready to stab something if things need to be stabbed.
And roll initiative.
What do
We
you guys
lose
do in
this
this?
fight
What do you guys do
10
in
times
this
out of
moment?
10. I was like, I don't know. Just I'm just gonna answer Vajra. I don't know. Seemed like a good idea at the time.
Her attention is drawn back to you. less immediately hostile than it was, because her hostility is now turned towards these two dragons that are dragons, and she hates it when people ignore her, right? Because they shouldn't, first of all, right? But she looks back at all of you, and she just has this kind of like look of annoyance, and then she loudly proclaims, right? Enough of this. I don't even know why you're both in those forms. And as she says that, you see them both kind of like turn and appraise her, right? Like,
come on, just
mighty big dragons. She a little snack, right? And they both kind of like look at her and look back at each other, and they're all tension that might have existed between them has now melted away, right? Like, and they're both kind of like, they don't chuckle, like they don't physically
they both
react.
Look at each other and go, humans.
But there is a shared moment between them. And then they both transform down into their regular forms.
Alternate forms.
Into their alternate forms.
Oh man, I had missed an opportunity. When they first transform, I could have hit them with the.
That would have been pretty good, actually.
I missed it.
That would have been pretty good. Vajra steps forward, and she looks over at Nindeltath, and she says, just kind of like in a proclamation, right? Your request for passage through the city of Waterdeep has been considered, and it will be granted. You'll be chaperoned through your duration within the city. You are not to stay within the city limits for more than a single day's time, and you have an ally waiting for you on the outskirts of the city. Once there, you are free to do as you please, obviously within reason and the safety of Waterdeep's citizens. Oranax will accompany you until you are beyond the bounds of the city. And the dwarf kind of like bows his head graciously. Yeah, I think she'll just turn and she'll say, "It's likely you will need lodgings, since by the time we reach the surface, it will be reaching evening." And she turns to all of you and she says, "I believe there is a certain place that might have room to accommodate you for a night."
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
it would be
why
our
would
pleasure.
we be cool with that? Giving us those like gotcha eyes, like no, we're cool with it.
You see,
Like
Othakent,
punishment. We like it.
Othakent kind of steps forward, and you see him kind of very quietly speak to Vajra, and there is a certain amount of deference there, right? Vajra Safar is the Blackstaff, but Othakent is not nobody, right? Like, these two dragons are obviously dragons, adult dragons and massively powerful individuals, but Othakent is not a unknown individual to Vajra and is an important ally within the Harpers, right? So there is some bearing to his words. You see her roll her eyes, and then you are permitted 2 days within the city of Waterdeep, since the morrow is midwinter and it seems rude to remove your access from the City of Splendors on a day of celebration.
We get
Why
to
does it
party with
always seem
dragons.
like she is half a
Partying
second
with
away from an
dragons.
aneurysm.
She is
Like-
always half a second away from an aneurysm.
Just like there's like a permanent vein. Just
You don't deal with the shit that this
bulging.
woman deals with. She is
Just-
half away from an aneurysm.
I gotta find that portrait of Zangief that.
But can we go back to the fact that we get to party with dragons? Because we get
It
to
is
party with
exciting.
dragons.
It's a thing. Happens
Like
sometimes,
actual dragons.
you know. she sees maybe like a little bit of excitement in the mix, and she's like, this is not intended to be a fun thing. You are still in trouble, and you two, and she looks at Aranax and Nindildath, and she says, will absolutely not be out of these forms while you are within the city. And there's this like, of course, kind of scenario. And seemingly the situation is coming to a close unless there is something that you guys want to do.
And nothing.
Nah, this is exciting.
Can we go back to the partying with dragons?
You're free to do whatever you
Oh
want.
no, it's terrible. Oh, what a punishment. It's how will we?
Sometimes it do be that way.
How will we?
Okay. There is a moment where Vajra is basically, turns to the second octave and tells them to prepare to leave, right? There's a heavy insinuation that Oranax is going to be the immediate chaperone of Nindildath, but the second octave is going to be nearby, right? There will be an adult dragon inside Waterdeep for 2 days. Well, the Dragon Ward doesn't count. The Dragon Ward lives in Waterdeep.
He counts.
He counts as a dragon, yes, but he is the Dragon Ward.
Jeremy.
He's the individual that can actually let dragons into the city, right? So he doesn't count. So she doesn't say it out loud to you, right? But there's a clear understanding that the second octave is basically going to be in the wings, watching in case something bad happens, right? And then you guys begin to leave with this now pretty large group of individuals. And Vajra
Ash is carrying this keg of ale.
Yeah, right. Just like doing the thing. Nice.
You don't put it on, like, you gotta put all the pressure on top of your spine instead to the side of your spine. It's bad for your back.
With your back.
Yeah. Locked legs before I even touch it.
There's a moment where the second octave is going ahead, Nindildath and Aranax are following behind them, and Vajra stops, and she turns, and she looks at you all, and she says, it really was a bit presumptuous of you to send an adult dragon up towards Waterdeep.
Where else was he supposed to go?
She just gestures around. Says, the Undermountain connects to hundreds, if not thousands, of ways into the Underdark. Release him there and let him find his own way.
Yeah, but he didn't know anyone there.
In the abyss?
I'm not saying he has to stay there forever. Just that coming up through our city seems potentially dangerous for a potentially unstable adult dragon.
He was sad, man. He lost everything. We thought we'd reconnect him with, I don't know, somebody he knew.
Could be a potentially good ally for Waterdeep.
Could be a lot of things. I might be less perturbed by it if you had escorted him yourself. But you just sent him on his merry way and hoped that everything worked out.
Well,
we wanted to, but unfortunately we were dealing with other things, with the mission and all.
We're on a tight schedule. We've got to push.
Yeah, the mission.
She looks at you and she wants to, you see her want to be like, she almost kind of has that kind of manager concept of well, you're supposed to get the stuff that you're supposed to get done and the stuff
Right.
that I want done in the same amount of time, right? But she catches herself, and she doesn't say that. I applaud your perseverance in sticking to the important matters at hand. And then she kind of like, she doesn't storm off, but she follows up behind Aranax and Nindilfeth.
I listen for the vein to burst on his forehead. Listening for it. Just want to hear that little pop.
I think in that situation, there's not really a lot else to happen unless you guys are trying to accomplish something particular.
I mean, we're walking through the first floor with 2 adult dragons. I think we're good.
Yeah. So there is actually a point that prior to reaching, I say prior to reaching, really, I think, no, technically, I think that's what would happen. Prior to reaching the first level of the dungeon, you bear witness to Oranax, the Dragon Ward, bringing out the titular staff, right? Which is these, it's kind of basically like, what's the, I do it every time, what's the doctors?
Yeah, I know what you're talking
Staff
about.
of Hermes.
Yeah, so it's basically a staff of Hermes,
Yeah,
but with dragons, right? It's basically a staff of Hermes, but with a gold dragon and a red dragon, right? And so you see Aranax bring this out and go through this very brief kind of like breaching of a barrier of the Dragon Ward that protects Waterdeep. So the Dragon Ward does actually extend a little down underground, right? So you all continue onwards, and you make your way up to the lift that leads up to the yawning portal. And you see, as you all approach, Vajra just steps up. You see her reach into a little side pocket, pull out a little pouch, toss it into the bucket, yank the bucket twice, right? Paying for everyone here. And then you see her look at all of you, and then she
teleports.
She like just bamfs up.
I thought you couldn't do that here.
She's not there anymore.
She's cheating.
He is the black
Rules
staff.
for thee, not for me. Bullshit.
Certain situations, my man.
I'm sorry. What is the situation? Inconvenience?
You smell bad.
Bones? Actually, anyone who has perception could make a perception check if they would like.
Not me.
Sorry, Ezra.
I will do that.
Do I have perception? I do. And I actually get it at advantage, too, because I've got a shield that gives it.
1-2 is pretty
It
good.
didn't go great anyways.
11's pretty okay. Neither of those is a high enough score to notice anything special that Vajra is doing.
She was actually an illusion the entire
For
time.
you, it's situations.
Oh, wow.
I mean, maybe. Who knows?
She didn't teleport. She just canceled the illusion.
Yeah, she just stopped concentration.
You all,
Still.
after, and this does take a little bit of time, right? Because it's not easy. The lift isn't made for large parties, right? It takes probably a good 15-20 minutes to get everyone up through multiple successions.
No. Just have the two dragons fly us out. Into the yawning portal.
I'm sure Durnan will be very happy about that. So, you all are either up in the yawning portal or in the process of going up into the yawning portal, depending on when you decide to go, whether you're first or whether you let the second octave go first or what have you, right? But I think as you all begin to gather within the Yawning Portal, it is late afternoon, early evening. Your return is celebrated. A round is immediately bought, right? Like the death board, that whole thing starts to go off. There's a bunch of people that are very excited that you have returned. There's a couple people that are happy that you're back, but groaning at the money that they have lost now. And there is a whole bevy of activity that springs up around your return. And we will interact with some of that activity when we get back from break. So we will be back in just a few minutes for more Dungeon of the Mad Mage. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like, commenting, or subscribing. It really helps me out. If you'd like to see me live, head over to my Twitch at twitch.tv/thedistanthorizon.